Welcome to the Immigrant Take with Jess and Jem, your weekly rendition of being an immigrant here in Van City, looking at different perspectives of what it means to be a part of this beautiful community. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's your girls, Jess and Jem, here on the Immigrant Take, coming at you with another topic about how to reconnect during or after post-COVID. But first, let's deal with what's happening in Vancouver. How you doing out there, Jess?
Yeah, I am surviving. This heat is just ridiculous.
This heat.
Insane.
I've run into people who say, but you're used to the heat. You're from Africa. But this heat is a different kind of heat.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, this is really dry. At least like where you are, where in Africa, there's the water. There's like a lot of cooler things to really mix the weather. So how are you coping?
Oh man, let me tell you, yesterday I was on a hunt for an additional AC in our home. It's just so hot, so hot, so hot. And it turns out like there's no AC within like a gazillion mile radius from where we are. Like from here to Atlanta, there's no AC. What can a girl do? It's crazy hot.
Oh, I feel for you. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Holy moly. Well, hopefully the weather gets a little bit. It's going to dip, right? It's going to dip like, is it tomorrow or sometime? It's going to dip and then it's going to slowly climb up by the weekend.
I feel like those people in the Bible who are calling for the rain and telling Elijah, let the rain come. I'm calling for the
rain. I've never been so happy to feel rain on my skin, right?
Right? Oh, sometimes the earth is calling for it. But, you know, this heat is good because, you know, they've been saying that, like, heat kills COVID. So maybe this is sort of like the way Mother Nature is trying to help us also get rid of this pandemic vibe, you know? We're making up with Mother Nature. Get rid of COVID, you know?
I think we're not fast enough in getting rid of COVID. But I'm just only scared just because they keep saying that there's a new, the Delta variant. So, I mean, as soon as one fizzles out, I'm scared the other one might start because I don't even know what the strain or how that one works.
Yeah. But that's the story of viruses.
Yes.
But anywho, today, let's talk about it. Makeups and breakups. What do you think about makeups and breakups? What things do you think about?
I think about everything from relationships, either intimate or coworkers or friends, to even yourself, like letting go of maybe how you were once, and then you know it's like you having a breakup with your old self and allowing your new self to come out. Like some people go out after a terrible breakup, you know, maybe they had long hair all this many years and they do a big chop.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be defining themselves, right? So yeah, I think about everything when it comes to makeup and breakups. What about you?
I think I'm the same way. Like when I hear makeups and breakups, I usually think about like more relationships than anything else, really. Actually, like maybe because I'm like a hopeless romantic. So when I hear makeups and breakups, I think of like a crazy whirlwind romance. But through this pandemic, I'm sure so many people have been like up and down, right? Up and down in relationships and work things and family things, because, you know, we've spent so much and then we want to be so much more apart, but we're all stuck together kind of thing, you know?
Yes.
So I wonder how others are dealing with like those scenarios of ups and downs in relationships, works and the like.
Right. I mean, like with COVID, like you said, you know, there's a lot of that happening now. And I'm just kind of confused, not really confused, but I'm more concerned about how some people maybe went through before COVID, you know, they had that schedule with like their spouse, right? Whereby maybe they only had time on the weekends because both were working adults and really made time for each other on, say, a Saturday or a Sunday, right? Yeah. And then with COVID happening, them being together all the time, that's completely new for people. I mean, some people have never felt that for maybe 20 years or 10 years or even like 3 years, you know? Yeah. So I really get worried because you see people talk about, oh, you know, it's like we're rediscovering ourselves, but at the same time, you're also rediscovering you and your partner because now you guys are with each other almost 24/7.
Yeah.
So it's,
And
yeah,
and definitely on like how you were saying before, like with makeup and breakups, even with your stuff, as you're discussing that now, like people rediscovering relationships, even with yourself, taking that time of like self reflection during this pandemic time. You're learning more about how to be better with yourself. I was watching, I think it was a documentary I was watching, and the psychologist was saying like this pandemic has caused people to try and like bring out the best versions of themselves, and it
absolutely.
took like a lot of letting go of like things that maybe created a lot of hurt or a lot of anxiety. But this time
Yeah.
of being in like isolation and away from like so many stressors has allowed people, honestly, the only stress is COVID that everybody has right now. Everybody has it here. But like being away from those other external stressors, people are able to let go of those things and work through some of those broken pieces of their lives and emerge the best or better version of themselves as they keep working towards that. And I thought about that, like that you can totally apply to so many things and so many relationships for people coming together as a family, right?
Absolutely. I mean, like when you say that, my only reservation that I have is just with, I'll speak on like immigrants as it relates to myself, is, a lot of them don't really know how to express themselves in that way, or there's like this hidden taboo almost about you not being allowed to express yourself or feel that you can express yourself, because that society will look at it as, oh, let's just say you're Black, right? You're not supposed to feel this way. That's for such and such kind of people,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, I mean, how would you, how do you tell that immigrant that, hey, you know what? It's okay that you can rediscover yourself. It's not everything is going to be okay with you, and that's okay. Like, how would
Mm-hmm.
you have that conversation with that immigrant that needs to make that change, or maybe reinvent themselves, or is going through some sort of process that would require them to rediscover themselves or have that alone time to really reflect on where they want to go or who their identity is, especially with COVID and all this downtime that people are going to have, and all these thoughts and mixed thoughts that people are going to be having.
When you say that, I think about like some of the youth that I've worked with in the past who have had that like conflict of like being who they're expected to be. And you're so right.
Absolutely.
And like as immigrants or as people who are confined, like even if you were born here but you were born into an immigrant family, you're confined to those expectations and norms of how traditions and values are upheld from where your parents may be coming from as well. And
Mm-hmm.
so trying to emerge as yourself or the person you feel you are can be difficult under some constraints. But like I was saying, that lady was saying in that documentary I was watching, I'm sorry, I don't remember her name. I'll try and go back and find it. But like, as she was saying, like in this time where we're away from our external stressors, we're surrounded by our families, and we're trying to get to the next podcast or the next blog or the next thing that's going to help us reinvent ourselves. It's really taking the time to find out what you value and what
Yes.
you desire to present out to the world around you, and how important that is to you. If it's something that's important to you, then your family, even if they have like reserves, this world is becoming more open. This world is becoming more acceptable of creativity and differences, that even in most places where restrictions, self-restraint, and like strictness, or that kind of like identity strictness is
A barrier.
those things are starting, yeah, those things are starting to like loosen as more people get the boldness to say, this is who I am, this is how I'm going to live my life, and accept this in a loving and respectable way, of course, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like what you're saying is completely bang on. It's just like what you had said, is working with those youth. I think it's always important that these youth look at us, those that are working with them, as more like their friend than like a teacher or enforcer or anything like that, because then they're able to confide in us all these anxieties or apprehension or thoughts that are going through their heads. So that way we're able to say, hey, you know what, we might not know the solution for this, but we might have some resources that will definitely help you. Like you talked about that lady that you were listening to, that documentary. You could be able to share that same knowledge or pass that link to the individual to go ahead and watch, or we could do a research for them and then point them in the direction where they can actually seek help that's going to help dissolve those ingrained beliefs that they were like raised to uphold. And yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Being able to plug resources and even help obtain skills to just like become more assertive or more expressive of your voice. I was reading something Meghan Markle said this morning about how women, everywhere she goes, she's being praised for how she's letting women find their voice. And she said something that I had never really thought about before. She said, it's not that I'm helping them find their voice. Women have always had a voice, but they just need to be empowered to use that voice, to let their voice.
Oh, yes.
And so I feel like that's totally the same here, is that you're always who you were inside. You know how you feel, you know how you think, you know what you value, you know what you want to put into the world, but maybe you just don't have that courage or that audacity to voice it out. So I feel like during this time where people are beginning to reconnect, beginning to emerge those new versions of themselves, let's say, maybe not better versions or real versions of themselves, let's say, I feel like they have to have that audacity or that boldness to really stand and say, this is who I am. And I feel like as immigrants, we need more of that as more movements come about, be supporting our culture, supporting our heritage, supporting the color of our skin. Like we need to have that boldness to say, this is me, see me, hear me, I'm thinking, I have ideas, I have things that I contribute to this society that we live in, right?
Absolutely. Yes, it's definitely time that a lot of the stereotypes get broken down. And it really comes down to just training the new generation, but also the old generation as well, because it's the effects of the old generation that's somehow being imposed into the new generation. And it's just a few of them that are actually breaking free and saying, no, this is not, like, it's the typical example of, an immigrant family. I understand their intentions of wanting their children to have a better life than they do, but then just drilling into that child's head that no, the only acceptable path for you that we will accept is if you become a doctor. So everything is pushed around. You have to go do really good in school. You have to be a doctor. You have to be a doctor. You have to be a doctor. But then I've heard so many stories whereby people do follow that path because why? They don't want to let their family down. One, two, they feel like that's the only thing that they know. And then when they do get into the field, they've spent so many years in education, studies, money, resources, time, only to find out that this is not their calling. And at that point, they're no longer doing it because they're passionate about it. They're doing it because they have no other option, because they feel like they put so much time into it. There's only a few that I know that actually are bold enough to say, you know what, I'm going to take ownership of my life now. I recognize that how I lived or how I was living was a different person. It's not who I really am. And there are some, and that causes them actually to go ahead and say, you know what, I'm going to take this bold step. I'm going to revamp and transition into a whole new person, the person that I know I was created or meant to be. And then their life, I realize, ends up being so filled with so much purpose. And when you hear their stories, it's like, wow, you spent 18 years in the medical field, and now you are a dog walker or so, but then you see the joy in what they're doing, and somehow it often brings, it inspires you, and also brings some sort of envy because you've met somebody that's completely happy with their chosen career path. And I think it gives those people control of their own life. Like there's just some sort of inner gratitude and satisfaction that they are able to do that. And it's also very empowering to them. So yeah, it's